You wake up sick. No hospitals, no painkillers, no antibiotics, just you, a healer, and a bag of plants. And somehow, it worked. Ancient medicine wasn't primitive guesswork, it was a system, and parts of it are still keeping you alive today. 60,000 years ago, a Neanderthal was buried in what is now Iraq. Around his bones, archaeologists found traces of yarrow, groundsel, and ephedra, plants with real medicinal properties. Ephedra is still used in modern decongestants. That burial wasn't a coincidence. Someone chose those plants deliberately. Someone knew. The oldest healers weren't doctors. They were observers. They watched animals. They watched sick deer seek out specific roots. They watched injured wolves eat certain grasses. And they copied. Slowly, over thousands of generations, a pharmacopoeia built itself through trial, error, and memory. In ancient Egypt, the Ebers Papyrus, written around 1550 BC, cataloged over 700 remedies: willow bark for pain, garlic for infections, honey for wound sealing. Honey, it turns out, is genuinely antibacterial. Ancient Egyptian physicians weren't guessing, they were pattern matching across centuries of accumulated observation. In ancient China, practitioners mapped the body's energy pathways, what they called meridians, and developed acupuncture. Modern neuroscience still debates exactly how it works, but the practice is over 3,000 years old and still in clinical use today. That longevity isn't accidental. The really striking thing about these early healers is this: they operated without any of the conceptual tools we consider essential. No germ theory, no cell biology, no chemistry, and yet they produced results because their method wasn't theory, it was relentless, multi-generational observation. They were scientists before the word existed. In Mesopotamia, physicians kept clay tablet records of treatments and outcomes, the earliest known clinical notes. They documented what worked and what didn't. That's not superstition. That's empiricism. That's the same loop modern medicine runs on, just slower. The first healers didn't inherit knowledge. They built it, one sick patient at a time. Here's a number that should stop you. Roughly 25% of modern pharmaceutical drugs are derived directly from plant compounds first identified in traditional medicine. A quarter of your medicine cabinet traces back to someone, somewhere, thousands of years ago, pressing a leaf against a wound and noticing something. Opium poppies were cultivated in Mesopotamia around 3400 BC. Ancient Sumerians called it the joy plant. They understood its pain-relieving properties with striking precision. Morphine, codeine, the entire opioid family, all descendants of that same poppy. Aspirin's active compound comes from willow bark, which ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Native Americans all independently discovered for fever and pain, independently, on different continents. Same plant, same conclusion. That convergence is important. When isolated civilizations with no contact reach the same pharmacological answer, it suggests the answer is real. It isn't cultural myth, it's botany. Quinine, the first effective malaria treatment, came from the bark of the cinchona tree, known to Andean peoples centuries before European contact. When Spanish colonizers arrived, indigenous healers were already using it. European medicine didn't discover quinine, it borrowed it, but ancient herbalists also understood something modern medicine sometimes forgets: the dose is the poison. Digitalis, derived from foxglove, was used in European folk medicine for heart conditions for centuries. In the right dose, it regulates heart rhythm. In the wrong dose, it kills. Ancient healers understood this balance without knowing why. They just knew the line existed and how to walk it. And there was something else. Many ancient medical systems mixed effective plant remedies with ritual and prayer. We tend to dismiss that combination as primitive, but the placebo effect is real and measurable. Belief accelerates healing. The ritual wasn't separate from the medicine. For the patient, it was part of it. The original pharmacy didn't have white coats or fluorescent lighting. It had roots, bark, leaves, fire, and an unbroken chain of careful human observation stretching back before writing existed. Around 400 BC, something shifted. A Greek physician on the island of Kos began separating medicine from religion in a way no one had done so systematically before. Hippocrates argued that disease had natural causes, not divine punishment, not angry gods. The body was a physical system. It could be studied, understood, and treated through observation and reason. This was radical. In most of the ancient world, illness was spiritual. You were sick because something supernatural had decided you should be. Hippocrates said, "No, you're sick because of your environment, your diet, your climate." He documented epilepsy as a brain disorder at a time when it was universally considered sacred possession. His followers recorded case histories obsessively. They noted symptoms, progression, outcomes. They were wrong about a great deal. The four humors theory, the idea that blood, bile, phlegm, and black bile governed health, held European medicine back for over 1,000 years. But the method was sound. Observe, record, reason. In Alexandria, around 300 BC, physicians performed the first systematic human dissections. They mapped the nervous system. They identified the brain, not the heart, as the center of intelligence, a conclusion that took the rest of the world centuries to catch up to. In ancient India, Sushruta was performing surgeries in 600 BC that included cataract removal, rhinoplasty, and intestinal repair. He described over 300 surgical procedures and 120 surgical instruments. His texts on wound care and sterile technique are astonishing in their precision. Surgeons in 6th century BC India were washing hands before operating. Germ theory wouldn't arrive for another 2,400 years, but the practice was already there. Ancient medicine wasn't a single tradition. It was dozens of independent civilizations all pushing toward the same goal through different frameworks. And the remarkable thing is how often they arrived at the same answers: clean wounds, specific plants, careful observation, without ever speaking to each other. The science of healing didn't begin in a modern laboratory. It began the moment the first human looked at a sick person and asked, "Why? And what can I do about it?" Most people assume ancient medicine died when modern science arrived. It didn't. It became modern science. The transfer was messy, slow, and often contentious, but the thread never broke. The Islamic Golden Age, between the 8th and 14th centuries, preserved and expanded the Greek and Roman medical texts that Europe had largely abandoned. Physicians in Baghdad were running hospitals with wards, triage systems, and rotating medical staff while much of Europe was treating illness with prayers and bloodletting. The concept of clinical trials, testing treatments on patients and recording results, was being practiced in Baghdad 1,000 years before it became standard in the West. Avicenna's Canon of Medicine, written around 1025 AD, remained a standard medical textbook in European universities until the 17th century. 600 years of use. A single author. That's the shelf life of a system built on real observation. And then there's what we still use directly. Turmeric's anti-inflammatory properties, documented in Ayurvedic medicine for 4,000 years, are now confirmed by clinical research. Artemisinin, the most effective modern malaria treatment, was derived from sweet wormwood, a plant used in Chinese medicine for over 2,000 years. The scientist who identified that connection won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2015. The plant knowledge that led to it is ancient. The honest accounting of ancient medicine is this: it contained both genius and catastrophic error in the same text, sometimes on the same page. Bloodletting was real harm. Four humors theory delayed understanding of infection, but wound hygiene, plant pharmacology, surgical technique, and systematic clinical observation, those were real contributions that never stopped contributing. We didn't replace ancient medicine, we built on top of it. Every antibiotic, every anti-inflammatory, every surgical principle rests on a foundation laid by healers who had no microscopes, no chemistry, and no theory of disease, just attention, memory, and an absolute refusal to stop asking why people got sick and how to help them get better. Ancient medicine is still inside modern medicine, quietly holding it up. If that surprised you, subscribe. Every week we go back to the moments history forgot and find out they were more important than anyone told us.